This is AoE2. The A stands for ASMR. And we're looking at the historic reality behind each unique unit in the Conquerors expansion, while I'm brushing this magic card over my calculator.
No, of course not. But for some nostalgia, I'll keep the Conquerors menu sounds running in the background. Quick overview. These are the current 58 unique units of AoE2 sorted by expansion. Part 1 and 2 of this series covered Age of Kings, and now we look into the Conquerors. If you want to support this channel, please enjoy the video. In Aztec warrior society, it was considered clumsy to kill an enemy. To take captives, on the other hand, was seen as a great achievement, and the rank of a warrior depended on the number of captives he has made. Jaguar warrior was the highest rank a commoner could achieve with this method. Let me give you an overview. The bulk of the army was made up of commoners called Yaoqiske, which translates as those who had gone to war. Upon making his first captive, the warrior was promoted to Tlamani, which just means captor. With 2 captives on his resume, the warrior could call himself Quetzalcoatl and wear a red and black suit of honor and a conical hat. This rank also came with a peculiar privilege. The warrior was now allowed to wear sandals in battle. One more captive unlocked the Papalotl rank, recognizable by the butterfly-shaped banner on their back. And finally, with 4 captives under his belt, the warrior could achieve the very familiar titles of Eagle Warrior or Jaguar Warrior, jointly called Quauhotholotl. Both were equally ranked and dressed as their namesake animals, and each group associated themselves with a different god. But aside from these symbolic differences, they had the same status, weaponry, and privileges. Specifically, our protagonist is now a full-time warrior. He's now also allowed to have concubines, drink alcohol, dine with the nobility, wear jewelry, and, most importantly, wear sandals in the royal palace. Jaguar warrior was not the highest rank in the Aztec military society though. One more captive got you to the next step on the ladder, the Otomitl. Finally, the most prestigious and feared rank was the Quaxique. You got there by, guess how, making another captive and 12 deeds of heroism. Didn't see that coming, huh? Gotcha. Quaxique shaved their head and painted it half blue, half red. Here's an illustration of one taking a captive. An Otomitl in green can be seen in the background. While the 2 highest ranks were reserved for the nobility, Quauhotholotl or Eagle Jaguar warrior was the highest rank a commoner could reach. And this brings us back to our unique unit. The Jaguar warrior's signature weapon is the Macahuitl, a wooden club framed by replaceable obsidian blades. While definitely a lethal weapon, obsidian can form sharper edges than razor blades, with the right technique, the Macahuitl became a great tool for capturing prisoners. By inserting fewer but further spaced blades, the Jaguar warrior could tweak his weapon to become less lethal, or he could use the flat side to club his enemies. To avoid being clubbed himself, that would have been the end of his career, the Jaguar carried a round shield and an Ichka huipili, a thick quilted cotton armor for torso or full body. The Aztecs soaked these in salt water and let them dry so that only the salt crystals remained, resulting in a protective crystalline structure. Very crafty. Like this, Ichka huipili could block blades, arrows and allegedly even musket bullets, making them so effective that some Spanish conquistadors preferred it over their own steel armor. Unfortunately, the Ichka huipili isn't shown on the unit model, and the Jaguar suit covers only head and shoulders, whilst actually it was a full body suit. Despite these visual flaws, the Jaguar warrior for me still is a 5-star unit. Why? Because the weapon and shield are spot on, because it is one of the very few unique units that is actually historically unique, as in only used by one civilization. And because the unit overall just makes sense. An infantry unit strong against other infantry? That's exactly what Jaguars train for.
This is Axel. Axel hits.
If you Google Tarkan, you will get something like this. Not very Age of Empire-esque, is it? Reason is, nowadays Tarkan is a Turkish name, and there's a singer with that name. The name comes from a medieval Turkic and later Mongolian nobility title, which referred to either a military commander, a governor, or simply any person of honor. The issue is, Huns, although they share a similar origin, are neither Turks nor Mongols. Also, the era of Hun activities predates the use of the title Tarkan. The modern association of Huns to the name Tarkan seems to come from a Turkish comic about a fictional Hunnic hero with that name. In short, Huns never have heard of something like a Tarkan, and that's not so good for the raiding. And it doesn't help that the unit uses a torch as a weapon. Yes, the Huns were infamous for sacking and burning towns, but I find a torch very unfitting for a noble, and it is not a battlefield weapon in the first place. The Tarkan still gets 1 point because his clothes are fine, and a light raiding cavalry in principle would be a good pick for the Huns, if it had a more suitable weapon like a lance or bow and a Hunnic name. Some naming suggestions would be Scythian Raider or Logades, but I'm also not super happy with those names, so let me know your suggestions. Saint-Exupéry's book, The Little Prince, starts with a small plane crash landing in the desert. The pilot spends the night sleeping in the dunes. In the next morning, a small figure, the Little Prince, awakens the pilot with a simple prompt. Please draw me a sheep. The pilot takes pen and paper out of his pocket and makes some genuine attempts, which all get briskly rejected by the prince. A bit frustrated, but a smartass nonetheless, the pilot uses a trick. That's a box. The sheep you want is inside. This time, the prince happily approves. With the same trick, we, the players, have been fooled since 2000. Back then, when the Conquerors was in development, the designers thought to give Koreans the Hwacha, a rocket-propelled spear launcher, as unique units. But animating the intricate Hwacha model would have been too complicated. So, they used the same trick as the pilot and put the Hwacha in a box. This is how we got the war wagon. The Hwacha is a rocket launcher on wheels that could fire up to 200 projectiles at once. There are no pictures of it on the internet, so I had to draw it myself. It's inside the box. Just kidding. The principle is simple. Javelin-like projectiles, each with a gunpowder load attached just below the head, were held in place. The loads were ignited, and then it went. It was not accurate, but against large formations of enemies, the Hwacha could be devastating. Reportedly, each projectile had the power to pierce through shield and armor. The Hwacha were mainly used in defense against Japanese invasions in the 15th century. In rare cases, Hwacha were also placed on ships. So, how do we rate this unit? If you take it as a fact that the war wagon is indeed a Hwacha in a box, I'd give it 3 stars. On the positive side, the Hwacha is indeed a Korean unique invention. It did shoot scorpion-sized projectiles, and it was mounted and transported on a wagon. But in reality, the wagon was not roofed, it had to be stationary deployed, and most importantly, it bombarded an area. Wondering what inspired the war wagon unit design? This is a Chinese war wagon replica that was found with the Terracotta Army. Familiar? But let's stay on Korea and talk about the second unique unit, the turtle ship, or Kubuksun. As a reaction to a looming Japanese invasion, the turtle ship was developed under the command of Admiral Yi Sun-shin in the late 16th century. Essentially, the Kubuksun was an even heavier version of the already heavy Korean battleship class, the Panoksun. No turtle ship survived until today, so we have only paintings and descriptions to reimagine its design. But we can be sure about some key features. A rectangular frame, a flat keel, a high bulwark that houses many cannons, and, of course, a roof that is covered in spikes and maybe also metal plates. Yes, the metal plates are a maybe, but the spikes are a fact. All that made the turtle ship extremely effective. For a start, it was surprisingly fast because it was powered by both oar and sail. It was also very maneuverable. The flat keel allowed it to rotate on its own axis. This is a huge deal. Not only helped this to navigate coastal shallows, but also allowed for a mighty trick. Fire all cannons on one side, and while they are reloading, pivot 100 degrees on the spot and fire the other broadside. This almost doubled the firepower. Speaking of firepower, in this department the turtle ship was far ahead of its time. This is the 16th century, so cannons on a ship are not that long established in this region. Even the largest Japanese ship class could carry max 4 cannons. Turtle ships had 26, maybe more. The high number of cannons was possible due to its sturdy design and high density timber. The structural strength of the cannon deck also allowed the use of long-range cannons. And, of course, we have the armor. To understand why this matters so much, we must know the preferred naval tactic of the Japanese. They would sail close to the enemy ship, fire their muskets at its crew, and then board it. The turtle ship, with its armored and high topside, was virtually immune against this tactic. On the downsides were only the turtle ship's high cost to build and maintain, as well as very limited seaworthiness on open seas. Thus, its operating range was limited to near coastline. You might say now, if turtle ships were so superior in battle, then Admiral Lee should have always won. Well, he did win every single battle, in 16 of which he used turtle ships, thereby sinking over 780 enemy ships without ever losing a single ship himself. 4 to 5 because the AoE turtle ship is missing the sail and is a bit too slow but otherwise on spot. Before we get to business, let's first talk about the elephant in the room. Bro, what's up with that biceps? His arm is literally wider than his head. The Plume easily wins the most shredded unit award. Sadly, this is the only thing he has going for him. Plumed archers are AoE fantasy. Archery played a very minor role in Mayan warfare. They mostly relied on melee weapons, and if attacking from distance, the atlatl and not the bow was the most common choice. Feathered head crests look different and were worn by high-ranking soldiers and not mere archers. And aside from the head crest, a vest with bare chest is in my eyes not the best. That's it? No stars to be gained here. Archery played an important role in many cultures. Maya isn't one of them. Conquistador, which simply means conqueror in Spanish, were Spanish and Portuguese soldiers that explored and colonized overseas territories, primarily in the Americas. As such, they established the third largest empire in human history, sadly at the cost of the native population. The conch combines two advantages the colonialists had: horses and firearms. Is this accurate? Yes and no. Conquistadors indeed used horses and arquebuses, but usually not together. In this time, guns were not fired from horseback. Mounted riflemen, called dragoons, are a much later type of soldier. They used a different firearm and even they typically dismount before shooting. So it is unusual and anachronistic to fire from horseback. And yet there are few accounts of conquistadors doing exactly that. That means a guy riding a horse while emptying his gun wasn't the norm, but did happen in the 1500s, and it happened uniquely among Spanish conquistadors, making the conch literally a unique unit. The armor of the unit is also correct, and let's not forget that the conquistador is the namesake of the entire expansion and gave it its icon. Initially, I wanted to give the conch 2 stars, but the more I think about it, the more I tend to 4. More meme than monk, the missionary truly is an unorthodox unit. A missionary is a member of a religious group who travels to an area to convert its inhabitants to the religion and often also culture of the missionary. As such, the missionary in Age of Empires makes sense, a unit that can convert and has high mobility. The donkey symbolizes traveling and humility, which is an important virtue of Catholicism. Sending missionaries isn't unique to the Spanish, it is also not unique to Christianity, yet the scale of Spanish missionization stands out. They actively and intentionally spread Spanish culture in the occupied Americas and thereby changed the way of living of an entire continent forever. So, if we accept that you can convert a flaming camel to Christianity and that the donkey is a symbol of traveling, I must give the missionary 4 stars. There's just one thing to nitpick. The Spanish carried away shiploads of gold from their colonies, so it's a bit cynical that of all monks, only the missionary cannot carry relics. One expansion checked off. When filling up the tier list, we can see the Conquerors performed pretty good. Up high we have the Jaguar ship and the Turtle Warrior, as well as the Spanish units. The tier list still has pleasantly few 1s and 2s so far. Thank you for watching. Also watch the outro, it's good. Bye.
Over on this side. Gray having some issues, but he walled in the villager. Big plays here. Big plays here from Armchair Saurus, everyone's favorite dinosaur. Walling in the villager from Sunset and then roasting her to a crisp. Roasting her to an absolute crisp.